All right, well, he is becoming a regular on Chatterbox. He's on Brandon Seho's mental health show, and that's Marty Brennaman. Boy, look at that attire today. What exactly is that writing on there? What is that thing?
Nothing but the best for you. I really go the extra mile, and I hope that it's appreciated back there among those den of thieves that you work with. But I cleaned up, shaved this morning. I mean, I got it together. I need to get a haircut. I got to work that in sometime the next day or so. But, it's always a pleasure. I'm looking forward to being with you every Wednesday, and it's a good time, and I'm right here ready to go.
Is that writing on that pullover you have there? I mean, it has Bengals colors on it. Is there anything on there?
Let me show you.
Oh, wow. Very nice.
Okay.
That looks Miami Dolphins-esque.
Is that enough now?
Yeah, that's really nice, though.
Okay.
You didn't wear that for Brandon. You had some tired pullover on when Brandon Seho came out and did that interview with you.
Well, I mean, he had to take what he could get. You understand? It worked out very well, and I enjoyed doing it with him, and I think he's a very talented guy. I truly do.
Hey, pitchers and catchers reporting.
Yep.
I read somewhere Hunter Green at least is, he's not comparing what their careers are going to be like, but he thinks that this young flock of Red starters could be potentially something down the road of what we saw in Atlanta when Smoltz and Glavine were coming up, along with Kent Mercker and guys like that. Greg Maddux, of course, came over as a free agent. That wouldn't be too bad for Redlegs fans.
No, it would be, on the contrary, it would be wonderful. But at the same time, I think it's a major stretch to even mention this group of kids along with one of the great rotations in the history of baseball. If they had 5 guys right now that they could count on, then maybe you talk about the potential of being what that rotation with the Atlanta Braves turned out to be back in the 80s, or rather 90s, when you had Glavine, Smoltz, Kent Mercker, Steve Avery, and Greg Maddux. I mean, the Reds are talking with 3. Well, you got to find 2 more if you want to compare this crop of young, talented pitchers with, as I said, one of the great rotations, at least as long as I've been around Major League Baseball. I don't know that I've seen a better one than the one the Braves put together under Leo Mazzoni and Bobby Cox back in the 90s.
You know what's amazing about that group, though, Dad? It seemed like, and Smoltz would have been the exception, but, at the end of the day, that group only won 1 World Series. Now, granted, they still won a World Series, but it's amazing whether it was in the National League playoffs a number of times, they would get knocked off by somebody, or eventually in the World Series get knocked off somebody. It made a lot of us wonder if, Smoltz was the only power guy in that rotation. The rest of them, they weren't soft tossers, but they weren't, blow people away kind of guys. Those are the guys that seem like they pitched the best in the postseason.
The hard throwers, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't disagree with that. I guess if there is one quote-unquote knock to that group of pitchers that the Braves ran out there every day, one was as good as the other. It was the fact that they had only one really, I guess you could call him a power pitcher in that rotation in John Smoltz, and the fact that overall their postseason performances probably were not the best in the world. But I think to counter that comment, and I know people like to talk about, well, he didn't play well in the postseason. Ted Williams didn't play well in the postseason either, in the few times that he had the opportunity of doing it, but he still looked upon arguably as the greatest hitter in the history of the game. Those guys had to get you there, along with a talented bunch of players that could produce the runs necessary to win on a day-to-day basis. So I take all that crap about postseason with a grain of salt. You play 162 games in baseball, and you got to have people good enough to get you to the top of your division and then to keep you there in order for you to be in the postseason to begin with. So I really put more stock in the regular season than I do in the postseason.
All right. Well, with that in mind, what would be reasonable expectations that Reds fans could have or should have for Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Ashcraft coming back? I would imagine he might be limited as far as innings are concerned this year. People forget Greg Maddux had a season where he lost 18 games. Terrible. In a season.
Yes.
Yes. Knowing at least potentially their struggles on offense when you look at this lineup, and that can affect a pitcher whether he wins games or loses games, obviously.
Right.
What's a reasonable expectation for Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo? Let's focus on those two guys.
Well, anytime you talk about baseball, and this probably will enter into a conversation ad nauseum for as long as the game is played, especially at the big league level, and that is the old sophomore jinx. We certainly saw it happen last season with Jonathan India, although injuries obviously played a big part of that. The fact of the matter is, when they talk about injury, sophomore jinx, those things come into play as part of that. I don't know, Tom. To be honest with you, I don't know that I can answer that question because there are too many other factors that enter into the equation as to how successful they can be. Now, if both of these kids go out and post earned run averages of somewhere between 3 and 4, not even getting to 4, that would be a sensational ERA throughout the course of a year. But suppose they suffer from lack of run production and go 8 and 15 or 9 and 14 or something like that. Did they have a bad year? Well, from a record standpoint, yeah, they had a bad year, but they also suffered because they couldn't get any runs from their offensive people. So the thing that worries me about Hunter Green, and I may be off target, but so much has been made about how hard he throws and how he set a record last year, I think, at the major league level for the most pitches thrown over 100 miles an hour. That's all well and good. But this is the same kid that missed time because of having Tommy John surgery. And this is a kid who I still think his mindset is, I want to strike out everybody I face. So I'm going to throw fastball after fastball after fastball and see if I can't do that, rather than adopt the theory that I'm better off if I get the guy to hit a ground ball to second base on my second pitch or hit a fly ball to left field, rather than going through the situation that he would face otherwise, and that is to throw a number of pitches against every batter. His situation would worry me because he's already had the surgery once, and that doesn't mean he can't have it again. And maybe his philosophy is he's reached a point now where, I don't need to strike out people every time. I don't need to post 12 strikeouts every game. I need to get people out with the fewest number of pitches possible. If he's evolving into that type of pitcher, then you know what? He's going to be a better pitcher for it, and he's going to be healthy for a long time. Lodolo, I think, is extremely talented because I think he's a kid that understands what pitching is all about in total. I think he knows that if I can get a first pitch ground ball to third base, thank God for that. But he also has the ability to strike out people. So I think him having, and maybe it makes no difference, but I think when you get a kid out of college from a high profile program like Lodolo had at Texas Christian, you're that much better off because you've had great tutelage in college from people who know what they're doing, in most cases, certainly at the top level of the game. And so I think he's a little bit more advanced as a quote unquote pitcher than Hunter Green is. So we'll see what happens. And I don't think you can discount Graham Ashcraft. I think the kid shocked everybody, including the Reds organization, by doing what he did last year. And now he's going to be facing the same type of situation that Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo are facing. And then in the big picture, as I said earlier, the Reds have to come up with 2 more starters to round out that rotation. But I think any team would happily accept that trio in a rebuilding situation like the Reds continue to be in because of the great potential that all 3 of these kids have. Maybe Green and Lodolo to a slightly bigger degree and take their chances with them if they can stay healthy.
When you're getting ready to start a season where your team is not predicted to have a good year, I say your team, and I'm asking you this going back to your years as a broadcaster. You had some good teams. You also had a lot of teams that are kind of predicted to be what this team is. And we never know at the end of the day. I always say, and I know it's cliche, you just never know. There have had to be seasons where you were there getting ready for a year and you're thinking, we're going to be really good and everything goes to the tank, or vice versa.
Right. Well, the best example of that's a 1990 team. I mean, nobody, the so-called experts predicted that team was going to win a division and be a contender above everybody else in the postseason once the regular year was over with. They go into first place on opening night. They never vacated, setting a record at that time for going wire to wire for the first time since divisional play came into existence in 1969. And then beat a very good Pirates team in the postseason, and then swept the Oakland Athletics, managed by Mr. Baseball, who everybody predicted would beat the Reds' brains out. So that's probably the best example in my baseball broadcasting lifetime. And I think if you come into a season not being given a chance in hell of being an impact player, there's no pressure on you. You go out and you play, and you don't be concerned like the Dodgers would be, or the Yankees, or teams like that, if they go into a tailspin and put additional pressure on themselves, because they're not supposed to be that bad. I think the first month of the season is going to be critical for this team, and I mean major critical. They cannot afford to get off to the kind of start they got off to last year when they lost, 22 out of the first 25 games, because in effect, any preseason prognostications from people who are going to go out on a limb and say, this club's going to be a lot better than anybody thinks it will be. All of a sudden now you're thinking, here we go again. So again, no pressure to begin with, because nobody's going to give you a second thought. But now when the bell rings in late March and the season is underway, now you got to prove to people that you are indeed going to be better than everybody thought you were going to be.
When it comes to a manager, and knowing, again, just assuming they've said they're in a rebuild mode and all that kind of thing. I sit there and I look, Dad, and look, I'm not as familiar with all the players as I was just a couple of years ago. I'll be the first to admit it.
Nor am I. Yep.
I look at what Terry Francona does, though, in Cleveland. Okay, and there are a lot of people out there that say managers really don't mean a lot in baseball. I've never agreed with that philosophy. They've tried to make it quantify it statistically that this manager, he might be worth 2 or 3 wins a year. I've never bought into that theory for a second. But I just look at what a guy like Francona, now granted, he has more talent there, but it's a bunch of young guys. As soon as a guy gets to a point where he's making some money outside of Jose Ramirez that they gave a big contract to this offseason, the turnover there is just amazing.
Yep.
What is it you think that Terry Francona does as a manager that always seems to have his team in contention regardless of who's on the roster?
Well, I think there are a lot of factors involved in that. You're asking me about a guy who's one of my friends who I have incredible respect for, who one day will be in baseball's Hall of Fame because he's won 2 World Series. I just think he has a manner about him that players relate to, and whatever those intangibles are. I don't know. I think he has the ability to manage with a philosophy of tough love. I don't think he constantly talks about how much he loves his damn players and how he'd go to war with every one of them. You ain't going to war with a team that loses 100 games. You've got to have tough love. And I'm sure that there are players on that club that would tell you that they enjoy playing for him. I think the biggest factor, I think, in whether a guy has the ability to be a successful manager, and maybe it applies to football and basketball too, from a coach's perspective in those sports, be as honest with your players as you can be. And if you have to, you have to sit a kid down and say, right now you're not performing. We're going to send you back. If a player comes in and wants to know why he's not playing, you tell him the truth. You don't tell him something he might want to hear. You tell him the truth. And I don't think there's a guy in baseball managing today that is more honest with his players than Terry Francona is. And I think as long as he manages, that will be the situation. I think any club would line up to hire him because of the success he's had with a number of clubs. He got fired in Philadelphia. I think he got screwed in that deal. But then he goes to Boston. He wins world championships. He goes to Cleveland. He's been immensely successful. I just think that the guy is something special when it comes to doing what he does for a living. And guys go about their manner of managing or coaching in different ways. His way has proven to be very successful. And so I don't know that you can really pinpoint what sets him apart from a lot of guys in Major League Baseball, but whatever he's doing right without any question.
All right, we got to get to some more important topics now. Our good friend Everett, he's showing up again, Dad. You got to give it up to Everett. I mean, he's like you. When you say something bad about a player, you'd be in that clubhouse the next day. Everett obviously got under your skin. He got under your skin a little bit.
Does he have a job?
Well, I don't know. As a prelude to a Harry Potter question for Marty, purely an opinion-based question, no right or wrong, not in any way, shape, or form designed to trick or test fandom. He would like one per segment if you'd be willing to do that. If he has a question, would you be willing to address it?
I would be willing to address it, but chances are, if he's going to ask me to name, he'll name a character and said who was he and why was he important. Chances are, I'll fail miserably because I don't have tremendous recall about books I've read. And there have been times when people have asked me about a book written by a certain author. Did you read it? Yes. What it's about, I can't tell you. I just don't have recall about situations like that.
Okay, well, here's the question, and I don't know anything about this because I haven't read them yet, but here's the question from Everett. And I admire him for showing up. Guy's a gamer. If you attended Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, what house would the Sorting Hat have placed you in? Now, I have no idea what that means. Do you know what it means?
I know what it means, but I don't even remember the name of the houses. What house?
Wait a minute. Casey does. Casey, what are they, Casey?
Yeah, so we have Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, Slytherin, and Gryffindor. Those are the four houses.
Yeah, well, I was getting ready to say, I would probably pick Slytherin.
And could you please fill me in on what that means? Paul, what is that reaction to? Why?
Marty, Slytherin, really?
Yeah.
Lean into it, Marty. There we go.
Well, I can be a very divisive guy, and work behind the scenes to bring Harry down in any manner in which I felt was within my abilities. And so that would I'd be a little embarrassed because Harry got all the positive pub and I'm not getting anything. And I fashioned myself as a guy who, despite the fact that he wasn't in most respects, a guy that's liked by my classmates and certainly the guys that I lived with in the house I lived in. So, yeah, I'd probably be a member of that house. Yeah.
Okay, well, Everett is very excited. And for the record, he says he does have a job.
What the hell is Everett excited for?
Everett says he has a job. He's answering your question. He has a job. He just has some free time right around 10 o'clock in the morning. So, hey.
Don't you find that a little bit strange that every day he has a little bit of time around 10 o'clock in the morning?
Well, I think he's making time for you. He likes watching you on the program. So he's finally, you know, everybody carves out a little 15, 20-minute break from work, no matter what you do for a living. And I admire the fact that he keeps coming back despite the fact that you've worn his ass out on this program.
No, I have not. I have not. I've just posed very, very important questions just so we understand. We, meaning me and you know nothing about Harry Potter.
No.
And the guys you got back there that also have some knowledge of the series of books by J.K. Rowling. Where he is in life. That's what we're establishing, and what kind of expert he's a guy that is on top of his game, and he's probably read all the books and seen all the movies, and would be categorized as a Harry Potter expert. And God bless him for that. I mean, he's got to have something in life that makes him want to get up tomorrow morning and go through his day. Doesn't have anything else other than watching this program. And so, God bless Everett. God bless Everett. Slytherin, that's it. That's a house.
All right. Everett says, I'm not a major expert. He says, but Marty, thank you very, very much. One guy wants to know, have you considered a Harry Potter tattoo?
I've never considered any tattoo. There's never been a consideration for a tattoo.
Okay.
Although I might have come close one time up at Ohio U on Dad's weekend. Maybe I might have done that. Close.
Strange things can happen when you roll into A-Town. You never know what's going to happen in A-Town.
There's no question whatsoever about that.
Fellas,
last time I was there, I got sick.
Yeah.
Last time I was up there, I got sick and threw up on the grass in front of an elementary school.
Oh, that's impressive. Fellas, you have anything for Marty Brennaman? Boy, how about that?
I got one thing, Marty. This is going to be Casey's first real season paying attention to baseball. Do you have anything for him on the first day of spring training today? Any words of wisdom to follow the season? Anything for our guy Casey here, who's embarking on his first baseball journey this year?
Well, the first thing I would say is, if you're going to follow, obviously you got to follow spring training as a lead-in to the regular year. Do not get overly excited about some kid that comes into camp and bats .455 and does everything, seemingly does everything right, and then go out and say something stupid like he's going to be in left field on opening day. Because we all know how things change once spring training ends and the regular season begins. And so just tell him to take everything with a grain of salt. And if he really wants to be the type of fan that blows people away with knowledge that he obviously will not have early, when they start talking about some spring training phenom, just tell him to sit back, take a big deep breath. 31 games they play in spring training. Sparky used to say, if you play that guy long enough, he will show you why you shouldn't have. And so, just be an all-encompassing man of calm and complete objectivity, and just tell those fans that are losing their minds over some young guy that might make the club that wasn't expected to, let's just withhold judgment right now. Do it that way, Casey, and people,
All right, I got one last question. Rowdy, every point, has jumped in and wants to know, Marty, yes or no? Should Steve Garvey be in the Hall of Fame? 10 straight All-Star appearances, played his whole career in certainly a dead ball kind of an era. Should Steve Garvey be in the Hall of Fame? Yay or nay?
For me, yes, he should be. For me, let's also consider the fact that he was one of the great Dodger teams of all time, and was in that infield of, 11 or 12 years in a row of Garvey at first, Lopes at second, Russell at short, and Say at third. But there are a lot of guys that should be in the Hall of Fame and aren't, because of those so-called experts from the Baseball Writers Association, many of whom never see one game, but yet they feel like they're qualified to vote. That's a bunch of crap. So, yes, I think Steve Garvey should be in the Hall of Fame. In fact, I was with Steve 2 months ago at an event put on by Fifth Third Bank, and it was great to see him, and we rehashed old times, and his career is very impressive when you look at the numbers he posted for the Dodgers from the late 60s into the time he left to go to the San Diego Padres. Yes.
All right. Fair enough. Hall of Famer Marty Brennaman, we thank you for your time as always, Dad. And I'm sure you have big plans on this beautiful spring-like day.
The wind's blowing too hard out there.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It's going to be 70 degrees today.
Yeah, but the wind's going to be blowing like crazy. I mean,
you don't have to worry about the hair that you used to have anymore, though.
I don't worry about that, but I look for perfection. Give me 70 degrees and winds that gust up to 12 miles an hour, and I'm good for that.
Okay. All right. Well, you'll be in Arizona soon enough. You'll get it when you get out there. All right.
I hope so.
Thanks for the time today. We love you. Have a great rest of your day.
Enjoyed being with you guys. Tell Everett you got a lot of rest before next Wednesday.
Of course. Thank you, Marty. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Marty. See you next week.
Thank you, boys.
All right.
I appreciate all of you.
That's good stuff.
All right, pal. Take care.